What a marvel! It's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the freshman force. Yes, Bill Whittle, and this is Bill Whittle now, by the way. I'm Scott Ott. AOC is now going to be the star of a comic book where she fights the establishment, and she is pictured on the cover of this comic book wearing a white pantsuit, of course, as the women did when they went to see the president speak at the State of the Union address, with a smartphone in her hand, standing over the carcass or the struggling body of an elephant with a donkey looking on nervously in the background. And Bill Whittle, it's a satirical lampooning of the establishment done by a bunch of people who are clearly, have an affinity for AOC, although she's not involved in the publication of this. But I guess the first question that comes to mind is, Bill, why is it that the left always figures out how to do this? Like, where's the comic book from somebody who supports a Republican?
Well, people who generally vote Republican have grown out of reading comic books, Scott.
Well, not all of them.
Yeah.
And we are trying to reach the young, are we not,
no,
Bill?
All of them have.
Are we not trying to reach the young?
Well, now we get to a different issue, and the issue is the deification of political leaders, and how did that work out? Barack Obama made a famous appearance in Spider-Man comics, and the entire comic book industry and the film industry in terms of Star Wars and Star Trek Discovery and all the rest of it, the gaming industry in terms of Battlefield 5, all of these institutions of pop culture, which are supposed to be about pop culture. There's supposed to be a difference between politics and entertainment, although you wouldn't know it to talk to most Democrats these days. And so when they try to cram politics into entertainment, all they do is they destroy the value of entertainment. It's very similar to what the left does when they try to mix politics and science. They try to throw as much science into things as possible to lend credibility to their politics. And all that happens is it destroys the credibility of science. So,
well, it's funny that you mentioned the 44th president of the United States, because the authors of this comic book about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez actually were also the creators of Barack the Barbarian.
How incredibly powerful a message they must have, because as a person who tries to keep his ear to the ground as much as possible, regarding the pop culture, I can tell you in all honesty that I have never, ever, ever, ever heard of Barack the Barbarian. So the better issue really here is the thought that this somehow is going to gain traction among people, that the political fetishization of political leaders by progressives applies to normal people, and it doesn't. There's a documentary that was released recently called the something Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the something RGB. It's the Notorious RGB. Is a
Notorious RBG. Yes.
Yeah, it's a takeoff on the Notorious B.I.G. on Biggie Smalls. And in this documentary, which I can assure you I did not watch, but I did somehow after a great probably 7 or 8 Xanaxes and a pretty near most of a fifth of scotch, was able to watch the trailer. And the trailer for that has a bunch of exceedingly uncool, very old, froppish women talking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg as if she were Supergirl. And I suppose to a certain percentage of the audience, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is Supergirl. Now, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was appointed to sit as a justice on the Supreme Court by Abraham Lincoln. And I wish that was my joke. It's not. And whoever it was that I saw, forgive me, I simply don't remember who it was, but that's a great line. But this is the thing that see, Scott, here's the thing about progressives. Progressives you can guarantee, just by the nature of their philosophy, you can guarantee that when a progressive comes up with something, it will be anywhere between 40 and 100 years out of date. This entire idea that we need the Equal Rights Amendment, which we did a segment on not too long ago, that's a freaking hot topic if it's 1973. And and all of the things with with Jesse Smollett and I was attacked by racists because I'm black and gay, may have happened in the 40s, but you see where I'm going
Now,
with this?
Bill, do you think it's just the left that needs it? It seems to me that it's a fundamental human aspiration to have some heroic individual that they can look up to, and that it's natural on both sides of the aisle, as we lionized Ronald Reagan, that they might lionize this young, vibrant, progressive social democrat coming up. The question is, how do you balance I want to make a hero out of somebody whose ideas I want to advance with that absolute slide into idolatry?
Well, first of all, and that's an excellent point. I would say that Republicans venerate Ronald Reagan, but I would not say that they have made him into their god in the way that John Kennedy was and Bobby Kennedy was and Teddy Kennedy was. And when Bobby was assassinated, you would hear people, which was a catastrophe, obviously. But you would hear people saying that was it. That was the day America died, and it is in the nature of people who are all about personal power to deify people who in the real world bring about actual personal power, which is why the left, and you can talk about the left, progressives, Democrats, liberals, or the right, conservatives, individuals, so on. There's only one definition that actually applies to what your emotional core is, and that is a collectivist or an individualist. Those are really what drives all of these labels. And since the progressives are collectivists, they fetishize political figures, and they deify them. And this is why you have admiration and veneration for Ronald Reagan, but you don't have the deification of Ronald Reagan in the way that you had the deification of John Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, Ted Kennedy, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Mao, Stalin, Lenin, Hitler, Mussolini, Chavez, Castro. These people are elevated to the status of godhead because the state is their god. And we just don't do that. Now, here's what I think is really interesting about this, because I'm the person who's been saying for years and years and years and years and years that Republicans need to understand that the pop culture is not a battlefield. It is the battlefield. It is where we have to go to get the message out there. But what's so remarkable about this, and why I say that everything that progressives do is 40 or 50 years out of date, is that while it is absolutely true that things like comic books, movies, television, and so on is not just an answer, it's the answer, it's the entire answer. The entire answer is not to make films deifying Ronald Reagan. The answer is to make movies about the values that Ronald Reagan represented as a politician. The left has, for them, politics is a religion, it's an occupation, it's a vocation, it's a calling, it's a hobby, it's a marriage, it's all of these things.
So would your criticism of both sides basically be that it seems like you're saying of the left that is engaged in the culture and of the right that is largely disengaged from the culture, that neither side really has the ability to essentially tell the parable and then step back without flipping up the PowerPoint slide that shows the three things that you should have gotten from that parable?
No, I'm sorry, that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is the Republicans cannot tell the story under any circumstances, period.
But when they do try to do it, you've seen those movies. You've seen those movies.
Yeah, but those are church movies, and I mean no disrespect for that. But when I see the Ronald Reagan biography, it's not going to change anybody's mind. What I'm saying is this: Republicans and conservatives, with certain notable exceptions that I can think of, do not understand how to tell a story about values. The progressives do and have done a spectacularly successful job of it over the course of the last 40 years. The reason I'm criticizing the comic book for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Barack Obama is that it is a rare case of them screwing up the message. Usually, they put their their philosophy into the mouths of George Clooney and Matt Damon, who are extremely sympathetic characters and who people want to like. And so they understand that if they want to sell this Marxist paradise, the best way to do it is to have a multimillionaire, handsome, good looking actor to sell the Marxist paradise. And that's where they've been successful. When they try to take politics into the pop culture, they immediately lose the enormous advantage that they've had by raising the curtain on the fact that here's your message. Normally they can sneak the message to you without you even knowing you're getting a message, which is why they've been so successful. And I want to say one thing about this because it bears real consideration on the part of conservatives. I've done a number of speaking events, and let me just tell you how this dynamic goes. I'll ask an audience of conservatives whether or not Hollywood. Do you think Hollywood leans left? And you don't even get a response; you get a laugh. Obviously, everybody thinks that Hollywood leans left because it does. And then I'll say, how many of you think that entertainment leans left? And all of them raise their hand. And my response to that is, no, well, you're wrong. Hollywood leans as far left as you can lean, but entertainment is innately conservative. It's innately conservative because entertainment, by its nature, is the story of an individual struggling against titanic odds in order to achieve a moral good. And the reason I can tell you that entertainment is conservative is because nobody yet has ever paid to see a movie where James Bond confronts a supervillain armed with a strongly worded letter from the United Nations and then drives off in a Prius at a reasonable speed. Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to see a movie about somebody who's suddenly woke, and then the climax of the film is where they join another mass of faceless individuals and take to the streets holding up signs. Nobody cares. Nobody wants to make a movie about a committee to save, the earth from the mortal peril of drinking straws. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen because it's not interesting. It's not interesting because it's not human. All of entertainment is inherently conservative because all good storytelling is about the story between an individual making a decision and then acting on a choice between good or evil. And that is about individualism, and that is why we win. And even if you make a movie about a group of people, like a football team, let's say, you're not going to make a movie about 40 people. You see a great football movie, Remember the Titans or something like that. That movie's not about everybody on the team. You make a movie about a football team, you're going to make a movie about the scrappy kid from the inner city who was told he'd never have a chance, and the quarterback who broke a leg and is now 2 years too old, but somehow manages to find the heart. You're going to tell the story about 2 or 3 or 4 individuals that together represent the team, but you don't tell a story about a collective because nobody cares. Nobody wants to hear it. It's not a story. It's not a story if a group does it. So when I criticize this comic book thing as childish and stupid and immature, it's a rare lapse on the part of the left to go further than they need to go. The great irony was not irony; it's tragedy, really. But the people who are the loudest advocates for gun control, and Matt Damon and Jamie Foxx leap to my mind immediately, are 2 people who we never would have heard of ever if we hadn't seen them blow away 400 people in living Technicolor with guns. And so this is the hope inside the darkness. This is the light at the end of the tunnel. Yes, the left owns the mechanism of making pop culture entertainment and references. And yes, the left is doing everything they can to make superheroes and comic books into instruments of left-wing political philosophy, but it's going to fail. And I'm going to go way out on a limb here and tell you that Captain Marvel, which is the latest story about, it's essentially it's about this woman, alien, who, from the looks of the trailers, has not a single redeeming human characteristic. It's not sympathetic, not funny, not particularly tough, just plain snarky. I think it's going to be a catastrophic failure. I know it's going to be a catastrophic failure. So if you want to make a cartoon about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, then for God's sakes, please do, and keep doing it, because she is a cartoon. She's a comic book character. And portraying her as a comic book character merely illustrates to people just how ridiculous this brand of it's like, what do you call her? I mean, is she the tepid Avenger? Is she Commander,
She's the
Commander,
freshman force, Bill.
is she okay? Is she Commander 90? You know, I mean, just a little below average IQ. Is she the lead agent for Operation Good Job? You know, what is her magic powers? Can she determine tire pressure at a glance? I mean, what is it that this person has? Because it's not intellect.
Well, she's got an Instagram account, and we have something better than she has, though, because we have the members at BillWhittle.com who make this show possible 5 days a week.
You know, I have never once we've done 115 episodes, and I've never once been played off with music the way I just was.
If only I could start singing. What a blessing that would be. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your participation in this enterprise called BillWhittle.com. Those members who have gone to the website and clicked that Become a Member link and contributed anywhere from about $10 to $50 a month. We invite you to become one of them if you aren't already. So for Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.